What was the worst sexual experience you ever had? Had a girl squeeze the tip of my dick closed just as I was starting to come. It tore my urethra and blood came out along with semen when she let go. Guess which F-King magazine she got the idea for this from? Rhymes with Zosmopolitan. So unfortunate because it was with a super attractive friend that I had portrayed as way out of my league for years. Hits me up on a Saturday night and invites me over to her new apartment for some drinks and board games. Sounds like a good Saturday night to me. About an hour into drinking and some intense Monopoly. Against seemingly all odds. She comes onto me. After a few minutes of kissing, undressing, touching, and eventually blowing me, she starts sucking my balls. And it was phenomenal for all of maybe 20 seconds until she suddenly F-King yanks my right nut with her mouth. Like physically jerks her head back with my right nut in her mouth. I let out the most embarrassing, squeakiest yelp and practically collapsed in pain. Pure bliss to total agony just like that. FCK that. Sounds like someone's read Cosmopolitan. I was making out with this guy. I'm not sure what happened, but our mouths seemed to create a vacuum. I could feel the air getting pulled out of my lungs. I had to hit him a few times to get him off me. It was intense. Thanks to all of you inquiring if he was a dementor. Considering the best part of that relationship is the karma I am now getting. He may have been. Makeout game so strong he almost took the soul out of you. Decided to try double penetration with my partner, his dick in one hole and a butt plug in the other. Was going fine until he pumped a little too hard and my butt had literally sucked the plug into my ass canal. Did I mention it was vibrating violently? Anyway, we couldn't get it out because lube and my partner freaked out because he didn't want the embarrassment of going to hospital, so he thought of the only rational thing left. Grab onto the little flap still sticking out of my butt with his teeth. He succeeded and then I went and cried in the shower. We're married now. Ex-wife sucked my dick sideways. Bent it 90 degrees and left me with irreparable internal scarring that completely changed the shape and size of my penis. They call it Peyronie's disease and it F-King sucks. I was making it with a guy in my car after a successful first date and he pulls his dick out. I proceed to put it in my mouth and hear him mumble something about coming after 2 or so head bobs. I raised my head, thinking he was warning me someone was coming. But it turns out what he said was, "Babe, I'm coming." And he did. All over himself. I got nothing out of it and he ghosted me after that despite having plans to hang out the next day. 4 years ago I suffered a penile fracture, which is essentially breaking your dick. To this day my wife still isn't allowed on top. Once, I got off after bartending a happy hour shift. This cute girl in her mid-20s, a teacher at the school across the street, sat down next to me. We got to talking. Drinking. More talking. More drinking. One thing led to another and she proposed a cab back to my place. So that's what we did. Girl had rules. No real foreplay. Missionary only. I wasn't allowed to touch her in any way and she didn't touch me. She just laid perfectly still, breathed, and told me to slow down. I complied with it all but was really not enjoying myself. After a while, I pretended to come and rolled off of her. She immediately started getting dressed. I told her she could stay and talk for a while if she wanted, but she declined. A freak thought occurred to me and I asked if she was a virgin. Her response was, "If I was. I'm definitely not now." And left. Once got off after bartending a happy hour shift. Initial thought, it's okay. Some guys are just more sensitive than others. We were having sex. I went down on her and she started crying. I jumped up and apologized immediately, thinking I'd crossed a line by going down on her. She said it was nothing I did, but every time she's about to orgasm she starts crying. I asked her if she wanted me to stop. She said no. So I tried it again. And she started crying again. But I said FCK it and kept going. And she orgasmed, she stopped crying. rode me till I came. And then she baked an apple pie and we got drunk. I was with her 8 months after that night. She cried every time we had sex. She hadn't been molested or raped before. I asked a lot. Turns out crying was just what she did. If the worst sex you ever had ended with fresh apple pie, you must be some kind of god. Dated a guy who didn't know the difference between urination and ejaculation. Was giving him a hand job while he was sitting on my chest and he starts peeing on my face. Took a few seconds for him to get the hint to get off. The next day, he seemed to be excited about having sprayed me. I don't think he ever had a proper sex ed class. I love my boyfriend and we have a great sex life, but last week something happened that was the worst thing to ever happen to me during sex. He cooked us a lovely meal and after we were curled up together on the couch, cuddles lead to kisses which led to clothes coming off and into the bedroom. Like the good girlfriend I am, foreplay started with me sucking his dick, but after a little bit he wanted to make sure I was warmed up too. So he started teasing me with his fingers. After a couple of seconds though, things got a lot warmer than we bargained for. See, for dinner he had made amazing beef chili nachos, which included chopping fresh chilies, residue of which was still on his fingers and now rubbed all over my most sensitive of areas. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Let's just say I'm well aware that the whiskey dick phenomenon is no urban legend. It's a legit downer. My problem isn't becoming flaccid, but never being able to finish. It's the worst. All the build up but no release. First time getting fingered, the guy just jammed his finger up my vagina. It hurt like hell. Just blindly poking fingers places like that is exactly how you end up accidentally fingering someone's butthole. I was about to hook up with a girl I had a massive crush on all through high school and she was so absolutely amazingly fine. Like for sure the hottest girl who had been into me up to that point. I had decent stamina but was nervous I was gonna blow in 2 pumps because of how excited I was, so I bought those long lasting condoms with the numbing gel for people who have premature ejaculation problems. Unfortunately it worked too well and my poor dude just went limp as soon as the condom went on. I tried a different one but that gel is really effective and it just didn't happen again. Luckily she was understanding but we never linked back up again. Shts a bummer. Decided to have a threesome with my college BF but neither of us really tried to set it up. One night he was drunk and playing MTG when his also drunk frat bro was messaging him about being sad cause bad with girls. Sober me went along with it because ain't no one gonna say I'm bitching out of what I agreed to do. Oh, naive and stubborn past me. So we went back to BF's room for shenanigans. Both were drunk and already not good at sex. Frat bro may have been a virgin or at least it was within the first 3 times having sex. Did not even get close to getting off. Was a major disappointment. That dude did get the courage to talk to a girl the next day. They ended up married. So, you're welcome. My ex was terrible at sex. He would come after about 30 seconds and hated foreplay. Literally goes from making out for 2 minutes to he jamming his willy in me and being done after 5 pumps. After one particularly disappointing encounter I ended up crying right as he comes. Not a few tears, but full blown sobbing while he's still on top of me. We dated for 3 years. Lost my virginity to a girl I just met when I was 15 who spent half an hour convincing me to have sex with her and then ended up pressuring me into it. I had no idea what I was doing or what foreplay was and she told me to just stick it in. But it wouldn't go in. Took us 2 hours to get my dick in. Eventually we had terrible sex. And then after she tells me she's probably pregnant. I felt bad and ended up dating her for 4 months afterwards. No pregnancy. Hooray. During a drunk hookup that resulted in an L, my partner lost control of her bowels and shat all over my crotch and bed. I was drunk one night and went home with a guy. 10 seconds into a blowjob I vomit on his dick and pass out. Next morning I felt really embarrassed but he said it was okay. The guy I hooked up with couldn't come. Like he literally couldn't unless he was shaking his dick like a goddamn jackhammer, which isn't something I'm capable of doing. Ended up being late for work and he became super obsessed with me. I bet his forearms are very asymmetrical. The death grip syndrome. I had one of those. And the guy was hung like a mule, so he just pounded away on me for 45 minutes before finally handling it himself. I almost fell down the stairs after. Was not a pleasant experience. When a girl cut my dick with her braces while giving me a BJ. Edit. Oh. And the time I got blue balls when a girl was blowing me and her mom knocked on the door and she stopped and left. I thought blue balls was a myth before that. It was very painful. I'm a lesbian and I was with a girl a long time ago who was bi, but I was her first. She didn't want me to do anything and her idea of lesbian sex was forcefully rub my clit for 30 seconds and then fisting me. That's right. Fist me. No foreplay. Barely any setup. Just shoved it into my mostly dry PSSY. I held back a scream cause her family was in the house and asked what she was doing. I had no idea. It felt like she was digging her nails into it. I told her as much and we just ended it there. My ex was terrible at sex. We were both virgins at the time, so I expected it to be awkward. Anytime we did it, he'd jackhammer me for 30 seconds. And pass out for several hours. It was worse since it was an LDR, so he slept close to 16 hours a day when he visited. He never really put any effort into foreplay or making things romantic. We were on and off, but he broke up with me by ghosting me every time. We were family friends for 15 years and dated for 3. King asshole. Edit. That got a bit out of hand. Maybe not my worst or most regrettable, but a funny one. Was having sex with my wife and decided to finish on her face. She decides to open her mouth and my load shoots straight down her throat. She starts laughing and gagging. I'm still coming and start laughing too. At this point I poop out the butt plug I had in and it lands in her lap, causing a lot more laughter. My most hilarious finish to date. It wasn't the worst, but at the time to me it was. I was having sex with my GF at the time. And it was still rather new. When it came to the moment, I came and out comes this super bomb of a fart at the same time. It was rather embarrassing because I really didn't know how to react. All she said was, "Did you just fart? I'm never eating beans for dinner again." Anal RP by my boyfriend of the time. He wanted to do it, I said yes, but once I realized it hurt too much I told him to stop and he didn't. I told him at least 4 times to stop, but he wouldn't until he was done. I'm scared to ever try an L again, even though I really enjoyed when I tried it consensually as a teen. The people in these stories aren't as attractive as you picture them. Bisul here. One of the guys I was with was too big. I thought I could handle it. I could not. I learned a lot that day. Sex with my ex-husband became pretty horrible. He thought that if he lasted a long time he was a god in bed. Instead, sex was just long. Boring. Same position for 40 minutes. I was literally on my knees for 45 minutes once trying to get him off. The worst was after we had our first daughter. She slept in our room, but that didn't stop us from having sex daily. I didn't want sex, but I thought being the good wife meant putting out whenever he wanted. On one occasion I'm bent over the bed, he's been going at it for a while. My daughter starts crying and I try to get up to soothe her. My ex pushes me down and says wait for him to finish. I try to get up again, he forces me down. I start begging him to let me go. He won't. So now I'm being upheld by my husband while listening to my daughter cry, then I starting crying. He probably upheld me for another half hour or so. It was pretty horrible. I dated a girl in high school that would get there just by me putting it in. Sometimes she'd come like 10 or 11 times very quickly. The problem was she wasn't able to reciprocate at all, so for the whole relationship I didn't come once. She was also a terrible kisser. The amount of tooth SCRPing that happened was unbearable. Sex was a mixture of her laying there, trying to kiss me occasionally, knocking teeth, and her not noticing because she was coming again. This is like a Greek F-King tragedy. I went all out setting the mood for an ex. Candles. Massage oil. Music. All that. And what did he do? Lie there with his eyes closed like a goddamn corpse. The entire time. This girl threw up while giving me a BJ. She was fire though. I gave her a kiss afterwards cause if I can eat her ass I can handle a little vomit. Haven't hit her up after that though. Laughter was involved. Dom guy, 30 SCM, and I, 26 CF, talked about boundaries and agreed on safe word and alternatively safe hand motion for if my mouth is covered or whatever. Pose puts me in position where I can't speak and can't make safe motion. Continued having sex with me despite using all my strength to buck him off. I slapped the shit out of him when he finally let me up while he laughed at me. So he purposefully set clear boundaries with me just to break them. I was scared. Then livid and then humiliated. We have mutual friends. I see him around all the time. Always looks at me like I'm garbage. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Too many people claim to be doms into the BDSM scene just to take advantage of subs and assault people. Younger me had no clue that sex could help start a period. All finished up. Looked down. My dick was like a murder weapon. I got a little nervous and asked if I had hurt her. She looks down and totally nonchalantly says nope, I am fine, I just started my period. Went from nervous to nauseous right quick because I was teen and that stuff was gross at the time. Drunk girl was on top. Having a great time. Right as she came she pulled her arm back and hit me in the face as hard as she could. No discussion about rough stuff beforehand. It was a bit of a shock. Fortunately she was petite. She made me banana bread the next day. And was hospitalized for psychiatric reasons a month later. One night stand, after some making out and moving to the bed. Clothes came off. I planned to go down on him. Got into the position. Put my hand around it and he came. Disappointing. To this day. He is still the quickest draw I've ever come in contact with. I was that guy once. It had been a while and she was the finest girl I knew who I'd crushed on forever. Normally I'd had no problems. But the moment she touched me I came. I was so embarrassed but I proceeded to eat her out for a half hour and then got hard again and FK'd her brains out. Managed to rebound from an otherwise embarrassing situation. Told her that I just was so attracted to her that it was an instinct to come. Older man I tried to convince myself I loved forced himself on me in my dorm room. I cried in the bathroom afterwards and spent the next 2 weeks worried I was pregnant. Never really trusted anyone after that and I still have intimacy issues years later. When I was 16 a GF at the time was hanging out with me in my room at my parents' house. She wanted to give me a quick BJ before she left so she got on her knees at the foot of the bed while I sat on the edge and she got to work. My younger brother's room was adjacent to mine and he walked out of his room and down the hallway mid BJ and it startled her thinking someone was about to walk in. While I was sitting up looking down on her do her thing she suddenly shoots up to compose herself straight into my nose. Trying to hide a bloody nose and a painful case of blue balls while she said bye to my parents as she left was pretty fun. Forms of legal prostitution is legal where I live though the rules tend to get broken in certain establishments owned by a certain group of people that like to cut off fingers if you know what I mean. In a hoe. I went into one place where the madam, boss lady, met me with a scowl and her hand out while grunting at me. Whatever. It's obvious she doesn't like white foreigners. The girls came in and were met. Started blowing me with a condom on. Yeah, it was me but also safe, and then refused to do me since I was too big. Like I'm wider than average but not massive or anything. Then I basically had to finish myself off. The madam tried to squeeze more money out of me after saying things like you had 2 girls. That costs more. While I explained that they didn't do anything and I had to pay to jerk myself off. TLDR. If you're in Japan.